actually didn't think that Trump would be a warmonger. Can you talk about your expectation, what that was based on, and how that compares to the reality that we've been witnessing?
Well, I think in the first administration, he was not a warmonger. He did a number of things that escalated tensions in different areas. For example, he was the first president to arm the Ukrainians, at least with offensive weapons. But I think by and large, in the first administration, he didn't give any indication that he was a warmonger. And when he ran in the campaign for the 2024 election, he went to great lengths to emphasize that he wanted to end all the forever wars and not start any more. And then, right before he took office, as you remember, he forced Netanyahu to accept a ceasefire in Gaza. So, at the very beginning, it looked like he was off to a good start. Uh, and then, with regard to Ukraine, I thought there he was deeply committed to ending that war. And I thought that it may take him a bit more time than it should to shut that war down. But I thought he would eventually shut the war down and establish reasonably good relations with the Russians. But if you look at what's happened, he's failed on almost every count. Uh, we used to call Joe Biden Genocide Joe when he was in the White House. We could easily call Donald Trump Genocide Don. I mean, he's continuing the genocide for sure. With regard to Ukraine, he has failed to shut that war down. And with regard to Iran, the Biden administration at least had the good sense not to let the Israelis suck us into a war against Iran. The Israelis tried twice in 2024, but Biden didn't take the bite or take the bait. But in this case, with Trump in 2025, he took the bait. And on June 22nd, he attacked Iran. So he has not done well in Iran. He has certainly not done well with regard to the genocide in Gaza. And he's not done well with regard to Ukraine. And I would add one other case to this, and that's Yemen. You remember he went to war against Yemen. He said, "We'll end this quickly. I'm going to win decisively." And after roughly 30 days, he quit and conceded defeat to Yemen, to the Houthis in Yemen. But the point is that he actually started the fight against the Houthis. So if you look at his overall performance, he looks every bit as much as a warmonger as Joe Biden.
You have stated that states are rational, governments are rational, I should say. Um, would you classify Trump's government as rational? Would you classify Biden's as rational? And if so, how?
Well, the point is, let's just take U.S. Israeli relations. Uh, Israel is a strategic albatross around their neck. The policies that Israel pursues in the Middle East are not in our interest. Uh, and therefore, for the Biden administration or for the Trump administration to support the policies of Israel to the extent that we do is not rational, in my opinion. And here I'm talking only about Israel being a strategic albatross around our neck. It's also a moral albatross. It's a double whammy. From a strategic point of view and from a moral point of view, our relationship with Israel is not rational. And that was true under Joe Biden, and it's true under Donald Trump. And of course, the reason that we pursue this particular policy towards Israel is because of the lobby. The Israel lobby puts enormous pressure on policymakers to support Israel unconditionally. And that, of course, is what we're doing. It's very interesting to listen to you talk to the previous guest, and the conversation really revolves around what Israel is doing in Gaza. But the truth is, it's not just Israel, it's Israel and the United States. And Israel would not be able to pursue the policies that it's pursuing in Gaza with regard to Iran, with regard to Lebanon, and with regard to Syria without complete support from the United States. The reason that Israel is able to behave so aggressively is the United States supports it at every turn. We give the Israelis huge amounts of money, huge amounts of weaponry, and diplomatic support. And that frees the Israelis up to pursue these policies that I would argue are not in America's interest, as I just said, but I would also argue are not in Israel's interest. I think what's going on in the Middle East today is a disaster for Israel. And over time, I think more and more people will recognize that.
And how is that? How can you expand on what makes it a disaster for Israel?
Well, I think from a moral point of view, the genocide is a stain on Israel's reputation. It's going to be everlasting. It's going to be there forever. I mean, this is a genocide. And it's not just any genocide, it's a genocide that's basically being filmed. We can see it happening before our eyes. With regard to the Holocaust, hardly anybody saw any evidence of what was happening. The word got out of Europe that a Holocaust was taking place or a genocide against the Jews was taking place, but we couldn't see pictures of that. We didn't really know exactly what was going on at the time. And it took really a long time to sort of unpack what happened between 1941 and 1945 in Europe. Uh, but in the case of what's going on in Gaza, it's manifestly apparent what's going on. And this makes it all the more shocking, by the way, that it's been allowed to go on. The fact that people haven't revolted and forced their governments to shut this down is truly shocking. But anyway, my first point would be that this is a disaster for Israel. Second, the idea that Israel is going to have perfect security by beating up on every state in the region and breaking countries apart like Syria and Iran and Egypt and maybe Turkey is a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. And Israel, in the process, is going to do enormous damage to itself. It's going to end up fighting wars forever and ever. And this is not in Israel's interest, especially since those adversaries are eventually going to get the military capability to threaten Israel in serious ways. And the best example of this is the case of Iran. The Israelis are running around, and of course, Donald Trump is as well, and many hawks in the United States, saying that we have just delivered this hammer blow to Iran. We have obliterated their nuclear program. They're never going to get nuclear weapons. And if they make any steps in that direction, we'll just go back in and slam them again. Uh, I wouldn't bet a lot of money on that. I think that the Iranian nuclear program is alive. The Iranians remain committed to at least enriching uranium. And I would be willing to bet that behind closed doors, they're committed to developing a bomb. They're not going to advertise that, certainly not at this point in time. But I would not be surprised for 1 second. In fact, I think it's likely that they will develop a bomb. So Israel hasn't solved this problem. In fact, they've made the situation worse. And the idea that they've won this great victory against Iran, or that we won this great victory against Iran, is simply not true. If anything, the key question is why the Iranians agreed to a ceasefire. If I had been playing the Iranians' hand, I would not have agreed to a ceasefire. I would have let the war go on for a couple more weeks. The Israelis were in real trouble because huge amounts of damage were being done to Israeli territory. And furthermore, the Israelis were running out of defensive missiles. And there was no shortage of ballistic missiles and drones and cruise missiles on the Iranian side. So one could make a good argument that the Iranians should have continued the war. All of this is to say that if the Israelis and the Americans start the war up again, I wouldn't bet that Israel and the United States are going to win that war. Just to take this one step further, and this is where the Americans come into play, it's quite clear that one of the reasons that Trump wanted to shut the war down uh, after the June 22 attacks was because there was evidence that the Iranians were going to mine the Persian Gulf, Straits of Hormuz. And that really spooked Trump, as it should have. All of this is to say that if we have another conflict, there's a possibility that the Iranians will mine the straits. And if they mine the straits and we have a huge economic crisis, this will not be good for anyone on the planet, and certainly for the Trump administration. So the point is that even absent nuclear weapons, the Iranians have cards to play. But the Israelis act like they can just slap the Iranians around. It has no real consequences. And to the extent that it might have consequences, Iran's going to fall apart, much the way Syria did. I wouldn't bet a lot of money on that. And I could go on and on with regard to this. We could talk about the centrifugal forces that are at play inside of Israel itself. This is not a happy society. This is a society that has wicked fault lines, and the animosity across those fault lines is not to be underestimated. And when you fight wars all the time like this, it invariably exacerbates uh, those antagonisms. So I think if you look at the body politic and you look at Israel's situation in the broader region, I think the idea that they're in great shape and they just need to apply a little bit more force and get a little bit more support from the United States is not the way you want to look at this.